Okay, we ready? Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I am really excited to have the chairman and CEO of RealWear with me today, Andrew Chrostowski. We just had an awesome demo of their product and their tool. So, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks very much, Blake. Excited to be here today.
We just had a chance to meet about an hour ago as we're walking through and going through the demo and starting to see the actual use cases of what you guys are building here at RealWear. But before we get into all of that, I want to know more about you. Where did you come from, right? I mean, we're sitting here at Fort Vancouver in Fort RealWear's headquarters. I know that you have a military background, but you've done so many things, and it seems like you're an engineer too when you're talking about the product. So I'd just be curious. Let's just walk through a little bit of your career journey and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So origin story. Let's see how we can do. I'm a physicist by training. So I actually was an Air Force cadet, went to Oregon State University. Majored in engineering physics, knowing that I was going to go in the Air Force. I wanted to know how things actually worked, right? Think high energy, lasers, et cetera. I wanted to know the physics behind things. But I also wanted to be an engineer to know how you build it. How do you actually make something work? And so that was sort of the motivation in there. So I had this passion for really understanding technology and how systems work together. I spent nearly 10 years doing research and development as a physicist in the Air Force, worked on what they call command control, communications intelligence work, went on to high energy systems, radar, RF systems, lasers, and then to Space Division in Los Angeles, where we worked on space-based assets. So there I got very interested in the whole problem of quality and major systems. And what I discovered as I got deeper and deeper into these major programs, as you're moving from, how does the technology work to how do you get the technology built and deployed, I began to see that it wasn't just a question of physics and engineering, it was a people issue. And that's where I got my passion around organization and people, because everything you'd say, oh, I'm just going to fix this program, it's going to be an engineering problem. Well, it would always be that, but it was really a people issue. So I got a master's degree in systems management from USC in Southern California, and then went beyond the Air Force as I left and started thinking about, what other system problems are out there. So think quality. I actually met my wife at a Deming seminar.
Nice.
So, Dr. Deming, one of his last public things, we talk about quality and system, was in the automotive industry, learned quality manufacturing with Hitachi, went on to do and create a Six Sigma manufacturing process for Schick Wilkinson Sword, one of the world's largest razor and blades and super products companies. And then went back to my roots sort of later on in aerospace with Goodrich Aerospace and UTC, and then into the industrial world. Or as I went through this whole arc of getting closer to the customer, understanding that technology, applying it in different ways, I stopped off at Wharton and got some of my executive education.
Just a quick stop off at
Wharton. At Wharton while I was working, And then, you come back and you say, now I kind of understand the executive level of how things happen. How do you create teams? How do you do innovation? As that part of my career advanced, it really started moving back towards startups, where you really start seeing small groups of people with great ideas, trying to bring technology to market and do it in a way that's efficient and successful. And that's really the nexus that got me into the orbit of RealWear.
So are you from Oregon?
I went to high school in Oregon. As I said, graduated from Oregon State University, but I was actually born in Washington, D.C. So grew up in Virginia and Utah, and then on to Oregon.
And then went to Oregon State. Wow. First of all, physics is is an incredible focus. But what drove you to do that? And then, there's got to be some sort of drive behind you from a leadership perspective too. Did you learn that growing up? Did you learn that through school? Is it just as you've built your career? Where does that come from?
I think people come with natural curiosity and maybe have curiosity about different things. I was one of these people who had, and actually had a school of thought about the idea of the expanding sphere. So if you imagine you sitting at the center of a sphere, and this is a thought I had as a child, right? And everything that's inside the sphere, you're an expert on. You know how it works, you know how to do it, you feel comfortable. You might say it's your comfort zone, right?
Right.
My visualization as a child was, my goal in life was to push that expanding sphere out further and further so that more and more things in the world, in this great, big, beautiful, exciting world, this universe, we're under, inside the sphere, not on the outside, right? Yeah. And so that was my curiosity that drove me towards physics and understanding how things work.
How'd you hear about RealWear? What's that? Dive a little bit deeper in what that piece is, because there's so much around that. And as we did the demo, your passion around what it is that you guys are building here is palpable. So I'd love to dive into that.
Yeah, so it's really a one click down on that story is that I was hired by George Oliver, who's now the CEO of Johnson Controls, one of the largest IoT companies in the world, think smart buildings, et cetera. At the time, he was the CEO of Tyco. And he had a business called Scott Safety and some assistance with part of Life Safety Products there that he was trying to do what I call a hot transition. He was trying to take that company from a holding company to an operating company to a technology company. And I was one of the first executives he hired to come in and say, help me make this transformation.
Yeah.
And so this company was all about, fundamentally firefighters, right? So think of all the movies you've seen, the firefighters with the face mask, the respirator, the tank, and the accoutrement that goes with that. And so I knew a lot of things, as you said. I was in the automotive industry, I was in computer industry, I was in consumer products, but I'd never really had firefighters as a customer experience. So the first thing I did when I got there was went to Texas A&M and got trained as an interior firefighter. I actually am certified in that.
Is that right? Really?
So if this executive thing never works out,
aren't you trained in? I mean, holy cow.
So I learned that, and what I learned was everything you ever saw in the movies about fighting a fire inside was just not true. Surprisingly, shockingly, not correct. But I went back to my infrared. I had gone to the infrared school at Wright-Patterson while I was in the Air Force, and thinking about what we could do, I said, we're going to make the firefighter of the future. We're going to make them safer and more effective because we're going to give them predator vision inside their helmets. So we created in just literally about 17 months, we went from napkin to a certified device, which is incredible in that industry, to put a thermal imaging system for a firefighter. So now you've got a heads-up display, thermal imaging. Every firefighter now can see what's happening in the dark and work more safely and effectively. Now, as soon as you've got that display in front of somebody, the first thing you think of is now, how do I put information on that? How do I connect to it? So now you immediately go to this idea of, I could have a connected first responder. Think about the incident commander, people in there. So it's like, I need to be able to push information to that first responder and do things with it. That leads you to connectivity, start asking questions about how would one do that. That put me into the orbit of some of the companies that work in this space. I met the then chairman of RealWear, who then said, I've got something I want to show you. And when I saw the original prototypes of the HMT-1, I said, this is that vision implemented for the connected frontline worker. And so the transition was immediate, like this is and all the excitement you had of seeing what you could do, the imagination you can drive and create value. It's like, this is going to work. And so I was excited about it. I was asked to come on as the chairman of the advisory board to help the founding CEO and the board think about developing this product and developing a company that could compete and support these global companies. And by the way, today 41 of the top Forbes 100 companies are our customers. So I mean,
are you kidding me?
Yeah. So it's for a little company here in Washington.
Well, you might have a Fortune 2000 and us looking at what we did earlier. So add that to the list.
Yeah, I love it. So we think about that and began to work through it. I became an investor because I thought of the future of the company, and then. As we got through our Series A round, it was clear that we were going to be doubling every quarter. Right? And for a hardware company, the expression in venture capital is hardware is hard, right? And it is, because you've got supply chain issues, you've got get things where you need to go rather than just build some more code and hit send 5,000 times, right? So I said, look, I'll step in as the chief operating officer. I'll kind of put the front end S&OP process together. I'll put in the sales drive. We'll kind of control that, and that allowed the rest of the management team to focus on raising money, being effective, converts out there, really being effective spokespeople for the technology. And then I stepped back out after the series, as we get into the Series B and back into my advisory role. Come, February of 2020, it was really a transition time for the company. And the board asked me to come back on the board as a board member this time, which I accepted. And then because I do have a background in board governance, so I'm a National Association of Corporate Directors certified director. So board governance is something I'm trained in. They asked me to come on to do that. They then made me chairman, and shortly after that asked me to step in as CEO. So I kind of got,
wow, in a short time.
Right, in a short time. So now it's March of 2020. We had literally one meeting in this building, in fact, in the conference room that's just over about 50 feet from us, with my team, and said, now, most of these people I knew because I had been involved with the company from almost the beginning, but never really had in this leadership role of this is my team. Now imagine you get one meeting, and the next day, the governor says you got to shut down. So all of the change management, all of the leadership development, all the team building now has to be done remotely, without the ability to kind of do everything I learned as an officer, everything I learned as an executive, as a frontline leader, you now have to do remotely to kind of bring the team through. And by the way, in a very challenging global pandemic where lots of things are changing. In a year, by the way, that we tripled our sales over the previous year. So all of that done is really interesting story.
What did you do in March of
So-
2020? I mean, what did that look like, and how did you guys come together and say, okay, what do we do next?
Yeah. It goes back to something I learned early in my career in the automotive industry when I would, sorry to solve problems, had been out there on the floor for a long time. And what I would do, as I learned as an officer, you go to Frontline. You go to the people who are doing the work, right? And so you'd ask questions. And what I discovered by doing that, I learned an expression that someone said, for a carpet dweller, you're not too bad a guy. And I asked this worker, and I said, I don't understand that. What do you mean a carpet dweller? And she pointed to the ground and said, I work on concrete. Everybody over there, the engineers, the executives, they live on carpet.
Oh, interesting.
And so, as we talked about problems, I realized it's the same thing that you would do in the military. You go to the front line to understand what's happening. Right. And so that daily touch, that going to Gemba, as we call it in Japan, right? It's like the understanding what's happening at the front line was something that I was passionate about. So when we couldn't do it here, what we did is we began immediately a daily stand-up. So I meet with my staff every day, 8 o'clock. We all get together every day on a Microsoft Teams call, and we understand how can we help each other. What are the challenges today? What do we need to do? And it gives that connectivity and we do things like we would do Throwback Thursdays a little bit, have a little bit of fun with it, and say, learn about each other. We take our work here at RealWear very, very seriously. We try not to take ourselves too seriously. So we do that daily, build that up. And then I started with weekly all hands for the whole global team.
How many people are at RealWear?
About 120 globally right now, going up probably be 130 by the time this is out. But we're growing, so it's happening. But back then, roughly 100 people in the organization. Yeah. So we would do a weekly call because nature abhors a vacuum, right? So people fill with doubt, fear, uncertainty. And you've got a global pandemic happening, a new CEO. Lots of business challenges, right? So we just started having a weekly call, and then as that, people began to understand and open questions about that, a lot of transparency. Then it was like, okay, every 2 weeks is okay, and then it's like, okay, hey guys, would you monthly? Okay, yeah, and we kind of now got that monthly cadence, and then we'd add on to that. We go to CEO small group meetings. So we'd bring together 12 or so people, not with their supervisors, right? And then we'd have a one-on-one conversation or a many-to-one conversation with me about what's happening in the business. So, the long answer to your question is about connectivity. It's about helping to bridge that gap. It's hard to do. I don't think anybody in the world has figured this whole hybrid thing out.
With all the hybrid sort of world going on, I would imagine the RealWear product has been. I mean, I just looked at it from all the things that we've been doing in the last 2 years, and sort of had an aha moment, like we need to start using something like that. So, have you guys? What's the sort of growth trajectory look like in the last couple of years? Has there been a significant amount of adoption across the globe with the product?
Absolutely. I mean, we have now 60,000 units deployed. We're by far the market leader in this space. Over 5,000 customers at various levels of engagement. As I said, 41 of the top 100. Which Forbes is amazing, and probably more than almost 100 of the top global 2,000, the top 100 there. So we really have done that. And as I mentioned, when we were taking the tour, we launched this company, and we're the real in RealWear. We really think there's when we announced the Navigator 500, which we were demonstrating with you earlier. We launched that on December 8th of 2021. We shipped the same day, right? When we launched this company, we went live. We were certified in 50 countries, right? Because we knew that we were going to be selling to global customers like Colgate, Palmolive, and others who would be, deploying this in their various global plants. You couldn't say, well, you can use it in the U.S., but you can't use it in Venezuela. You can't use it in China.
How do you do that so quickly? Like, just in terms of a comparison, how hard is that? Because I don't know, but I would imagine to be certified in that many countries is a pretty unbelievable feat. So and that quickly.
It's about planning, right? It's about having that as a concept. I often say it's always easier to do something right the first time than go back and redo it, right? So we knew that we were going to have this approach. So as you go forward, you understand the requirements, right? And you think about what's needed for that, and then you line up those resources and you just knock them off as you go. So as you're developing it, you know what's going to be compliant, and then it's a matter of filling in the blanks and doing that. And some of it just takes time. Once you've got that established, some countries take longer than others, and some of them came after launch for the ones that have longer time. But 50 were done before we got to day one.
Yeah. So what have you learned as a leader? You, Andrew. I mean, all from your, I would say, focus on maybe the last 2 years, but what you've gone through at RealWear. But really, in your whole leadership career. Mm-hmm. What have you learned about yourself? And that changes, I would imagine, often. I know it does for me. It changes, there's always little learnings, but maybe in the last 18 months, 2 years, what have you learned as a leader, as a person?
Yeah, I think when I look at the last 18 months, 2 years of what's happened here specifically, and there's a lot of things that just validated learnings that I've had, but became really clear, and what I'm so proud of this team at RealWear is it became obvious to me that imagination is far more a limiting factor for a company than capital. What this company has done with limited capital, with a small team, to change the future of work, to really change way, literally tens of thousands of people, how they do their job more safely, more productive. We probably saved tons of more jobs during the pandemic because people who wouldn't otherwise be able to keep their businesses running, kept their jobs because they could keep their companies running. And talk about having a green impact. For a company our size, when you start having global customers like Exxon not having to fly people all around the world, if you take somebody like Goodyear, where they don't have to pay $10,000 per trip plus all the greenhouse gases so it's traveling, we have a huge impact on changing the way these footprints work for these global customers. So to me, it's this idea that imagination is the most important part of that, and that's always a piece of what it is to be human. And that's this connection to humanity, and being a human-centric technology company has just come home to me as we worked at that. And we talked about the future, right? And the future, I like to say demographics is destiny, right? And that just means that if you look today, there's a shortage of workers. We read about it in the press all the time, right? Skilled workers are at a premium. Right. This is a demographic trend. It's not an accident, right? There are fewer skilled workers, and it's going to be true for decades to come. That means companies have to find a way to get the work done. Right. You have two choices. You can automate people out of that system, right? Or you can make the people who come on board more agile, faster learners, come up the learning curve more quickly, and therefore be able to feel better about themselves. So, our mission at RealWear is to engage those frontline workers, make them more connected to their customer, more connected to their peers, more connected to their business. Yeah. And then with this access to real-time information in the cloud, closing that last 6 inches of the IoT world to their mind, this knowledge transfer platform, allowing them to be empowered to do better work. Yeah. And that's fulfilling for a human being. It makes their life better. And that ultimately raises their elevates their level of performance, which is great for their enterprise. Yeah.
There's probably a lot of people out there when I ask a question like, who would you want to have coffee or a cocktail with in history, past or present or whatever? I'm sure there's probably people out there that would say you, because of, all the things that you have done in your career and the things that you're a change maker, to be honest. So what about for you though? Yeah. Who would that be for you?
I would love to sit down with Sir Richard Branson on Necker Island, kick back with, and by the way, he does these meetings barefoot. So it's like barefoot in the sand, talking about all of his life experiences where he's done everything from solo ballooning to, being part of a space program, winning the X Prize with his, support from that, all the things that he's done really in terms of building that business. And then, he overcame personal limitations. He's a dyslexic, right? He had a tough time in conventional education. And so he's really found a way to connect with people and do it in a wide variety of industries. So I think it would be a lot of fun, and B, an educational experience.
I think I would take that coffee or a cocktail for like 4 weeks. And just hang.
I think
mean,
it's probably going to
be,
have an umbrella in it if you're on Necker Island
Yeah.
with Sir Branson, but you know.
Yeah, no kidding. What a great answer. So for those that may not know about you or may not know much about RealWear, hopefully they know a lot more now. As we're having the conversation. But where can they learn more about you? Where can they find you if you want people to find you? And then and more about RealWear. Where can they go?
Oh, the first and most important part of your answer is RealWear.com, because we have a number of use cases, a number of videos that you can connect to. We have a YouTube channel that's really exciting. You can dig in and see people really using the device to create value. And so I'd recommend anyone who wants to know more about the future of work, can go there and kind of get a glimpse into and stimulate their own imagination as to what is possible in their industry and in their business. For myself, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So please follow me on LinkedIn. If we've met, you get a connection, happy to connect with you. But I post a lot about the future of work. I talk a lot about leadership. I talk about innovation in those platforms, and so including Twitter. So you can find me at Andrew Chrostowski on LinkedIn or a Chrosto at Twitter. And we can maybe put those links for somebody.
We'll definitely do that. Yeah. Well, Andrew, thanks so much for the time. Thanks for the demo. Thanks for just sharing your journey, your leadership journey, your passion for what you're doing at RealWear. It was just a pleasure to come up here, and I just appreciate the opportunity and you saying yes to join me. And looking forward to seeing what you got going on even more in the future.
Blake, what a pleasure. Thank you so much. I can't believe the time's already gone by.
Yeah, I know.
We'll have to do this again for a version 2 sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that. Would love to.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.